Welcome to Rivers in the Wasteland. I'm your host, Amanda Williams, and today I have a conversation to share with you that I had with my friends Brad and Katrina Bruce. They were searching for meaning in many different places, and the Lord was kind enough to give them a little nudge in the right direction. During our chat, they laid it all out for you. Here's my conversation with Brad and Katrina Bruce. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. So I know Brad and Katrina from our church. We go to Kingdom Living Messianic Congregation. So we have a little small group within our church that we have created ourselves and just with some common interests. And so we have a little dinner group that we get together and just chat about things. And it's been really fun to get to know them more. And something that I wouldn't know about Brad and Katrina is that they have not always followed the Lord, which you would just never know that by knowing them because they are just such an amazing couple. But I wanted to kind of just start by you telling us what was your upbringing like. You can each take a turn to share where you guys were maybe growing up as far as spirituality.
So I grew up Reformed Presbyterian. So I grew up going to church on Sundays. There was no instruments. There was not a lot of there wasn't a lot of heavy worship. We would get up and we would stand and we would sing the Psalms. And, we would sit back down and then there would be a long sermon. Children were integrated into the service. We didn't have we have Shabbat school now, and we didn't have anything like that. So we just had to sit there during service. And the sermons were often, fire and brimstone-esque about, the judgment that is upon us. Not much about the living God, the God that is still with us, the God that still, reigns and performs miracles to this day. And so I felt like I never doubted that God existed. I just wanted to know God. And by the time I was 18, I feel like I didn't know him. And I said, well, I think God is still there, but I didn't find him during that season of my life, during going to church there. And so I still want to find God, because the God that I learned about God, but I didn't get to know God. And so I learned about a God that was very judgmental, a God that was very harsh, a God that was very distant, a God that was very old. And distant. He lived in the time of the Bible. He doesn't really live now. I mean, he does, but it's far away in heaven. And all he really wants from me is my obedience. And if I can't give him that, then I'm basically worthless. I don't have much to offer if I can't offer him my obedience, which, as a fallen, human being, in a fallen world, I struggled with that and living up to those expectations. And so it's very legalistic, and very black and white, and yet it seemed that the rules that we followed were less to appease God and more to appease the others in our congregation. As far as, okay, we can do things on Sunday, but we can't let anyone else know about it, which tells me, it's not so big of a deal, that God sees that, but we don't want to let other people at the church see that. And so I felt like there was a lot of hypocrisy at the church. I know there was a lot of that sort of thing going on. And so I was disenchanted with it in general. When I was 18, I still didn't know the Lord. I didn't know God. I wanted to know God. I yearned to know God. And so I left the Christian faith and struck out on a new path, which ultimately led to the New Age and the deception therein. But that said, unless you have any questions, I'll let Katrina go ahead.
No, go for it, Katrina.
I think my parents have always kind of, believed in God, but we weren't a church-going family. I remember going to church with friends, when I was, like, in elementary school, and I remember, like, going to vacation Bible school a couple of times. I thought that was really fun. And, and also I remember my grandmother, she was the only one in our whole family that went to church every week. Um, but it was really interesting. No one really quite understood like her church because she went to church on Saturdays. Um, she was a Christian, but she went to church on Saturdays and she didn't celebrate Christmas. She didn't really celebrate Easter, and she celebrated the feasts. It's kind of interesting that the church I ended up at is so is a church on Saturdays as well. But yeah, we always knew that Grandma was very had a very strong faith, but and we all saw that, but we none of us really went to church as kids, besides her.
So, how did you guys end up getting together? Did you meet in like the New Age circle, or did you guys meet before you guys kind of got into that?
High school.
Oh,
We met
okay.
Yeah, we met at high school. And I was a junior, she was a freshman, and we've been together ever since.
Oh, high school sweethearts. Did you feel like you led the way, Brad, into that New Age kind of world?
You know, all of our paths in life have been together. I don't know that I've taken the lead in anything really because we both, I went to JUCO for 2 years while she was finishing high school, and then we both went up to KU together. And once we were there, then we started to, through class, through friends, through various, um, means and methods, we started to get, a little taste of the I would say, well, I'll say not New Age necessarily, but the liberal indoctrination. Um, as far as the colonizers and all of these things that are now like rampant. Back then, I feel like we're just starting to bubble up. Maybe it was happening before then, but I feel like they weren't really prevalent back then. But I still feel like it was a very liberal education. So the stage was set, I'd say. But then it was after college when we got married back in 2005. Like right after we got married, we were at dog park in the Penn Valley Dog Park in Kansas City, Missouri, and met a woman who
But
taught Kundalini yoga. Go ahead, please.
but I think it was well before that though. Um, Before we got married, like we got into like the Unitarianism.
We only did that to find a minister. We didn't know who was going to marry us because we didn't necessarily want a Christian minister, and so that's a good point though, 'cause that's how we found Unitarianism, because we found a minister who, like us, believed in God, but not necessarily the God of the Bible. Just believed in God, believed in unity and love and oneness with
Oh,
all
faith.
and all those things, with all faiths, yeah, which we were like, okay, this is great, because at that point, I felt like God, like I was just telling Katrina that I felt like at that point, God was much bigger than the God I grew up to know, because really, the God I was taught about was seemed like just one aspect. I was like, God has to be so much more than that. And so, like, the Christian God, it's not that he doesn't exist, but it's like one facet of the real God. This is way bigger. And all faiths, are different facets of the same, giant universal God. And so, like, they all share a little bit of the truth, is what I thought at the time. And so
Mm.
when we found a Unitarian minister to marry us, it was perfect. And that actually, good point, Katrina, that led us into Unitarian Universalism. And it was after we got married. So that was the first step. And then after we got married, then we met the yoga instructor. and that was really the next big step. So we'd already started going to the Unitarian Universalist Church, uh,
And they
and where we
dabble in a little bit of everything, you know?
right, some Bible, but then some Wiccan and some,
Mm.
Buddhism and some, a little bit of everything. Just like I was saying, like they all tell a little bit of the truth that is God, and all point to the same in the same direction.
Looking back, can you remember ever feeling like this doesn't feel right? Or was it just kind of all so new and you weren't really paying attention?
It was new. I'd say it was new, and we were paying attention, but I was just so hungry, I think, to know God that I was willing to eat what they were feeding, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
And so even though at the time, I didn't know that it was, laced with poison, the time, I felt like I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm on the right path because I'm still learning about God and about myself and, like, still on that search trying to find God, and this is just another aspect." And so I really felt like we were growing in that, and learning, and we're at the same time, we're, starting to read a lot of the New Age people that were kind of part and parcel with the Unitarian Universalism, that like Deepak Chopra and Eckhart Tolle and Wayne Dyer and all those guys. And so I feel like it was just starting to build, and I did feel like we were starting to learn about God, and that was the great deception.
Or the universe.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it's now we understand it as learning more about his creation and not the creator. But at the
Right.
time, it felt like we were getting to know this even bigger God than that small, angry, jealous Christian God that I grew up knowing about. That was very antiquated and old and judgmental and angry all the time. Is the
Right.
God I grew up knowing about, and so we felt like we were moving beyond that and learning about a loving, universal God that we're all a part of, and it connects us all, more like the Force from Star Wars.
Mm. Yeah. So you said that you met a yoga instructor and that was kind of the next step. What can you take us on that journey from that point?
We met the yoga instructor, Devakara Khalsa, which, funny enough, her name means angel, right? And so we started going to Kundalini Yoga at 3HO Kundalini Yoga in Kansas City. And the very first time we went, she had an air about her. She was very light and very, it wasn't like the other people around us, the people we're used to hanging out with. She just had this kind of like she almost, I mean, I hate to use the new age terminology, but she had like this higher vibration about her and like this lightness about her. And so it was very seducing. And so we went and we did yoga, and it wasn't even like super intense, but it was, some mantras and some stretching and some, silent, mindful meditation. And it felt so soothing to the soul and so relaxing to the body and so good. It just felt really, really nice, especially, being in our 20s and, starting our careers and the hectic work environment and the world and just everything so busy and crazy all the time. It was very soothing and very relaxing and very,
It was also like a more spiritual kind of version of yoga, not just like a go and exercise and that's the extent of it and the purpose of it. It was more of a spiritual, vibrational, like and like they would have you make these like tonal sounds and tuning in with your voice, and it was a lot different than just your normal I'm going to yoga class.
Mhm.
right, which was part of what drew us in. We didn't really care I mean, the stretching and the body movements was, a bonus, but we were really looking to, get closer to God. And this was another way we thought, we could do that it was another avenue by which to find God and, tune in.
You're looking for spiritual truth, and
Right.
this was just like like, "Oh, maybe we found it now." Was
Mhm.
always the searching for truth and not quite finding it.
So we kept doing that with her for a few years, I believe. And we became really close friends. And truth be told, she knew there was a lot of things she knew that was beyond us at the time, talking about, this was like just cell phones were just becoming a thing. And I think the iPhone hadn't even come out yet. But already she was telling us, "Oh, don't use those regular headphones because they'll send EMFs to your brain. You need to use these ones with like the air in it and all this stuff." I'm like, "Whoa." And now looking back, I'm like, she was ahead of her time on that and a lot of things as far as diet is concerned and all these different things. And so but it's kind of like the rest of it is that there's so many morsels of truth mixed in with the lies, uh, which is what I think Satan does. He takes bits of truth from the gospel, from, the Lord, and he mixes them in with lies. So it's hard to tell what's what anymore. And you see these truths, and even if, yeah, and then you take the other for truth. You're like, well, if this is truth, then that must be truth too. But,
Mm.
you don't realize at the time it's not.
Right. So you did that with her for a couple years?
Yeah, and then she moved to Utah to be with her daughter. Her daughter was pregnant, going through some issues, and so she moved away to be with her. And we tried to go a few times after that, but really didn't click with any of the other people, the other instructors that were there. And so we just quit going. But we continued, or at least I especially continued to practice thereafter and still reading all of the books and still going to the Unitarian Universalist Church. And then I got to the point where I would wake up early every morning, like 5:30 whatever a.m., and meditate for like an hour. And I got to the point where I could just easily sit down and just evacuate my brain of all thoughts for about an hour and just sit there and meditate, without any problem. And I found that if I didn't do that, then my day was kind of like, crazy and chaotic. And so I needed that. It's almost like I needed that fix. I needed that fix in order to get through my day. And then, but it just like a fix, it didn't last. It wasn't sustaining. I needed to come back for more. I needed to keep dipping in there in order to sustain that peace because, later on in the day, things get chaotic again. And I would try to say the mantras again in my head. And I would try to, there were some things, again, there's bits of truth mixed in, like an attitude of gratitude. I would have an attitude of gratitude, and that would help my whole situation, which I think is still important. But it's just where's that gratitude directed, you know?
Right.
So, but yeah, so we still continued to practice. I continued to practice. Um, let's see, we started in 2005-ish after we got married, and we continued to do it until 2018. So that's about 13 years.
Oh, wow. Were you ever instructors?
No. We did like to spread the gospel, as it were, and tell those around us that, we knew,
A
like,
false
it
gospel?
exactly, the false gospel. Spread the false gospel. But that like, "Oh, you should try and meditate. You should" exactly. "You should meditate. Oh, have you thought about doing yoga? It would really benefit
Yeah.
you," you know? So we still, because at the time, that was what we knew as, like, the higher consciousness and the path to God.
Mhm.
But, I like, there's no looking back, there's no, like, North Star. There's only, like, other constellations to look at. There's like the Buddha, which, oh yeah, he attained nirvana like 3,000 years ago. And all of these other yogis and people, they go in caves for their whole life and meditate, and yet they still don't attain that. So the idea that you would, some guy in Kansas City who's also trying to raise a family and run a business, good luck to you.
Right.
You're not going to do it, but keep trying anyway. No, it's good that you're trying. Keep trying. you're stuck in the karmic cycle, and you're gonna be, reincarnated again and keep going through this for like another 1,000 years. But don't worry, keep trying. You're doing good. And so it ultimately
Just
ended up
to try
like
harder.
very, yeah, try harder, do more.
Yeah, we haven't, like, found the right the right secrets yet. Like, you need to keep searching for those other secrets that you haven't learned, because
Right.
you know, that's where it is.
But every question you ask seems to come with a lot more questions uh, that come from that. But yeah, you keep searching. But yeah, it's all about doing. Keep doing. Anytime something would not go right, it was always my own fault. Because if I'm the creator of this world and something's not happening like I want it to, then whose fault is that? Well, that's obviously my fault. And either I'm not meditating enough, or my consciousness
Mhm.
isn't high enough, or my vibration isn't high enough, or worse yet, maybe it was something I did in a past life that I have no idea of, that I'm still guilty of, and I got to fix that somehow. And I don't even know where to begin to do that, but I got to try, because I'm not getting this, check from this client like I'm supposed to, and I really need it to pay the bills, and it's all my fault because I'm not, meditating enough or intending strong enough.
Is that something that is real though? Like you have things that you're trying to fix from a past life? Is that really like what they believe?
Yes. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
That's it's exhausting to try to fix things from my own life. How would I be
Right?
able to even possibly fix things from another life?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so it's a very heavy weight to bear,
Mm.
to hold all of that karma on your shoulders.
Well, you would need to do a lot of yoga if you're trying to hold all of that.
Right, exactly. That's exactly it.
Um,
Yeah.
I just read a book this last fall. It's called The Body Keeps Score. And it talks a lot about trauma and your body, like holding trauma. And like one of the big things to release trauma, he talks about, like, there's a whole chapter on yoga. And always been like a really cautious with that kind of thing, just because of all like the spiritual implications. Um, but it does seem like there is a lot to like the way they have kind of figured out like how the body works to release stress and
Mhm.
trauma. And so like I it's something that I've kind of always been torn on, like feeling like, wow, like that sounds really cool, but I'm gonna stay away because of XYZ, because I don't want to dabble in anything. But I know a lot of people that have really great experiences with it that aren't like kind of what you're talking about, like that aren't like the more like spiritual stuff. But I know that I know the roots of it. I don't know. It's so controversial.
Right. No, you're right. The roots of it are all Eastern philosophy, which as far as I'm concerned, are the little g gods that,
Mhm.
after Babel, they were spread out around the world. And that's why you see so many similarities between, things, pyramids appearing in South America and in Egypt and in, Tibet, all over the place. These same sort of things appear, and they have a lot of the same philosophies. I think yoga is ultimately based in and a derivative of the Eastern religions, which are, some of the little g gods that are the principalities and powers in cosmic places that we ultimately fight against. And I think that, Satan masquerades as an angel of light. And so that's why it feels so good. And he knows way more than we know. He knows how to make us feel good. He knows how to make our body feel good. He knows how to make our mind feel good. And it's all just luring us away from the gospel, from Jesus Christ, and from God. And so I'm sure, I am positive that there's so much to um vibration and chakras and tuning and all of that, but I won't touch it now. I just can't. I feel I'm so leery of any of that, that, when I
Mm.
hear some of it, I'm like, "Oh, I'm sure that God did make things so amazing and beautiful that things vibrate at different frequencies and all of this," but I just can't get near it anymore. I
Mm.
can't. Maybe someday I will, but I can't for now.
Well, it's kind of like when if you're an alcoholic and you're sober, like you can't
Right.
you're not going to want to go anywhere that has, anything with alcohol, like you kind of build that fence around like what you don't want to even go near. And that's totally respectable. I mean, I think it's a wisdom.
Well, also too, these yogi gurus that have written down these um, flows and all pranayama. I can't remember the words. What do you the pranayama? Am I saying the right thing, Brad? Breathing patterns and breathing patterns and mantras and all these things. They say that these things were like given to them in like a prophetic way, and they're to be used as a form of worship to little g gods. Like um that's what they were established as. So
Interesting.
we can't you that's like, I think that they were given to them in their minds the way God has spoken to our prophets. Yeah, and I don't think you can separate
Mm, I see what you're saying.
that spiritual element and that worship out of the movements, because they're very specific. The movements are very specific. Uh, so in my mind, you can't separate them out. So we just don't. And stretching and all that stuff, great. Just find yourself some nice stretching. But
Yeah, there's
yoga,
some of that I've allowed
the
myself to do, the stretching and whatnot, but
yoga,
none of the rest of
yoga,
it.
the specific poses and flows, those I think are. I mean, people can do their own research on it, but they're a type of worship.
Hmm. So interesting. Did you guys ever like move from that into other things like crystals or cards or anything like that? Or did you kind of just like stick with the yoga stuff until you started to realize there was something different for you?
I didn't ever like buy a set of the cards, but I was interested in, like the psychics and all of that sort of thing, and like angel numerology and like trying to contact your spirit guides. What else? I think I went to like a conference one time that was, all of the kind of uh mysticism and like what do you call it, Brad? It was like angely things, but not like good angel things. And like magic and yeah, I'm sure there was crystals there and stuff like that. I didn't buy any, but
So you were definitely searching for more.
definitely.
Mhm. Always more because, yeah, it was never like I said, it was your cup never was to overfilling. You are always searching for more to fill your cup. And, and I tended to I mean, I also was into that very same stuff that Katrina was just talking about, but also, very much into the quantum physics aspect
Yeah.
of, that Deepak Chopra talks about, that, we're all like, and I don't actually even as a physical being exist, because there's more, space between the neutron and electrons that make me up than there is between the earth and the sun, by scale, relative to scale. And so I was like, I was into all that because it made sense. It it started to actually explain God in a tangible, even though that's not tangible, in like a scientific way and pull it all together. And like maybe like science is trying to explain God and we're getting better at doing that, which I think, science is like so far away. I mean, it tries. That really is what it's trying to do, I think. I don't think that's a lie. I think it is trying to explain God, but I just think it thought it was, actually had something when really it was just grasping at straws. Um,
Mhm.
and but so I really got into everything that he was talking about, and then how you can utilize that to we're a microcosm of the macrocosm. And so if the macrocosm is God, then we are a portion of God, and we can thus affect the world around us like God. And so then we would manifest. So a lot of the scientific aspects of it interested me as well. Again, it was just all new and seemed very I don't know, tangible. It
You're
seemed like we were on something.
like you're figuring out the secrets of the world.
Right.
Mhm.
It was the secret from the garden,
Yeah.
like, "Here, God didn't the God of the Bible didn't want you to know this, but we've got the secret," you know? That's why they call it that book, the New York Times bestseller, The Secret.
Yeah.
I worked for someone that had me read that, and within the first couple pages, I felt kind of sick every time I would read it. And he was like, I need you to go through the whole thing. And I was like, I don't really feel like this book is for me.
Yeah, that's wise of you. I'm glad you didn't.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny is that I read that book and I was like, "Oh, this is child's play." Like I was so far beyond that. I felt like that was targeted to the masses that hadn't yet evolved and elevated to where we were.
Interesting.
Like we were so far beyond that. I read that and I was like, this is nothing. This is child's play. So,
Wow.
yeah.
When did you guys go from this place, which sounds like you were pretty deep into this realm, for lack of a better word? When would you say you guys made the turn? Like, what did you encounter someone who preached the big G gospel to you, or what happened there?
No, I mean, as far as somebody preaching it to me specifically, but like in 2018, I have a historic restoration company, and I had a business partner at the time, and the company was kind of starting to teeter and fall apart, and the employees were discontent. I was on the rocks with the business partner. Things were not going well in that relationship. So therefore, if guys were leaving, we were in danger of losing contracts that we had already signed on for. And what does that mean? And are we going to have to claim bankruptcy? So all of these things were happening, and and all of the manifesting and intending that I was doing was just amounting to nothing. It wasn't paying off. It wasn't working. Like it was coming up empty, and I was getting really tired of it. And I found myself like emotionally at rock bottom, which I just heard a song the other day, and it said something to the effect of, I'll have to get it, that, uh, you know, r- when we find ourselves at rock bottom, that's a really good foundation to be on because, the Lord is our rock. And so
Mhm.
he often finds us when we're rock bottom because that's a really good foundation to start to build from. Um, but all of my final jobs that were wrapping up, that were trying really hard to finish with the employees we had left, were coincidentally at churches. There was
Mhm.
the Priory of Ephesus church, which was like the singing nuns. They were able to build this big new cathedral and had us plaster the whole thing, but from their selling their CDs of their singing, which was beautiful and enchanting and wonderful. But the point is, we were at that church and a few other churches to where I just went. I went and found a dark corner and just cried out to Jesus. And because I was at rock bottom and I didn't know what to do anymore, and none of the new age was cutting it. It wasn't doing anything for me. And I just said, Jesus, if you're there, I really need your help right now. I need you in my life. I need your help. And so then I started to notice things changing, my perspective changing, my situation changing. Things were still falling apart in the business, but like I wasn't so hopeless anymore.
Hmm.
And so I continued to do that. Like often I usually got there before everyone and left after everyone. And so like I would get there before everyone and there was like they had this like little pond with a little shrine and a statue of Jesus down there. And I just went and I just wept at it. And I was like, Jesus, I need your help really bad here. I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know where I'm going. And I need your help. And, and then again, things started to change and I felt better. I felt like I wasn't so alone in the universe, spiritually speaking, anymore. And there was one night in particular where everyone had already left and the sun was going down and it was another similar situation and I was at my wit's end and I was just literally sitting there on the steps outside this, half completed cathedral, just crying to Jesus that I needed his help, and I opened my eyes, and there in the field, just like 100 yards away, was a deer and her doe or fawn, whatever the child, a deer and a doe and her fawn, looking at me, and I felt like that was the Holy Spirit. I felt like that was Jesus saying, "I see you. I recognize you. I'm listening to you." And I so just I but at that point I was still, not convinced. I still felt I like to say now that I was the prodigal son and I was away, and so that was me hearing the call to come home. But it took a
Mm.
while yet before I got home. But that was the start. That kind of season right in there, that summer of 2018 was the season in which I started my walk back home.
Mm.
So
Do you feel like you were kind of like throwing out a shot in the dark when you asked for Jesus's help after not having reached out to him for so long?
yes, like, I didn't even know because I never knew him, right? I never knew Jesus before. He was a guy in the Bible from a long time ago, and
Yeah.
I never even really read the Bible. I'd read what I had to read during Sunday school before service started because we got there early so I could go to Sunday school, and I went to vacation Bible school too, so I read what I had to read, but I never, like, read the Bible, and so I didn't know a lot about him, um, more than what I was, like, told, what I gleaned during service. And so I didn't think that he was gonna be mad at me for having left, but I also didn't like, he was just I knew he was there supposedly and that,
Mhm.
maybe he could help. So really, yeah, it was a shot in the dark.
Yeah. Wow.
And then, during I think the major catalyst for us was, um, after COVID. We took our kids out of school during COVID, um, and so we started going to a homeschool group, and some friends that we made there in the homeschool group, they, uh, were Christian, and so, they invited us, or they invited me to, go to a mom's day off kind of a thing. It was like a homeschool moms Saturday where you go to a church and there was a lot of the singing and speakers. And they told me like, just to warn you, there's a lot of singing at this thing. And I'm like, okay, whatever, sure. I don't have anything against a church. I'll go.
Yeah.
This could be fun. And so, and I'll get to hang out with these other moms. And so I went and, uh, I was trying to be like open minded, like, yeah, this is cool. And then they were saying the opening prayer, and the lady speaking was like, I'm going to pray Psalm 23. And so I closed my eyes. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do, right? When they're praying, I'm close my eyes. And I had like a vision of Psalm 23 as she's saying it. And it felt so real, like I was inside Psalm 23, like the water, flowing water, and the grass in the valley. I just broke down in tears. Like, I had never experienced anything like that. And I was just completely blown away. And I think I cried the whole day. Like,
Aw.
I never had heard worship music before.
Wow.
And like all of this worship music was really moving me. And I didn't even understand what they were singing about. Like
Yeah.
they were, singing about the blood of Christ. And I was like, this seems really strange, but I'm really moved.
Yeah.
And so at that point I was like, I just something weird just happened to me and I got to go buy a Bible, and I had to go and buy a Bible for everyone in my house. And we're going to read it, and we have to do something different. Like
Wow.
this is the way we need to go now. So
Wow.
I think after Brad, and so after Brad having the experiences that had been having, he was like, "Yeah,
How far apart were those things?
2018, we started the walk back, but then COVID happened in 2019, right?
2020."
2020.
2020. Okay, 2020. And so after COVID happened, we were not in league with anything that was going on, and we were quite disturbed by a lot of what was happening in the world. And so we could see like this darkness rising up, I feel. And so like we almost felt like we needed to quit walking and start running toward the light, whatever that meant. And we had already given up like the new age, I think, at that point. And all of the like the homeschool group she's talking about. Hang on,
Okay.
I was gonna say that some of the podcasts we're listening to, some of the books we're starting to be, we're starting to listen to more conservative things that were saying, now is the time to open up your Bible, to read your Bible, to get on your knees and repent, to worship God. Now is the time to do these things. And I feel like we were getting these signs and from all different angles at that point. What were we gonna say, Katrina?
Yeah, and it was a process over a couple of years of moving away from kind of the liberal lifestyle and new age um, doctrine, I guess, towards being more conservative minded and living a more conservative lifestyle. And some point in 2021, between 2020 and 2021, it hit us like the Bible and Jesus is the way. What we've been searching for this whole time that we haven't found yet.
But then I still wasn't saved yet. I don't think I wasn't fully on board. I knew now that Jesus was the North Star, but I did not let go of the other constellations yet, as it were, until that summer of 2021. And we went to a demolition derby out at Lakeside Speedway, and they had a pastor come up to give the invocation, and he says something to the effect of, Lord, we pray that you would be with us tonight, that you would keep all of the racers, all the guys in the cars safe tonight, and that you would keep the fans in the audience safe tonight. And Lord, we just thank you that you sent your son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross for our sins so that he could have a relationship with us. And it hit me right there. A relationship. He wants a relationship with me. That's all I've ever wanted, was a relationship with God. And you're telling me that he did that for me so that he could have a relationship with me? And so at that moment, I just started bawling. I mean, I not like like outwardly, but just like I started crying, just like tears flowing down my face right there in the middle of the demolition derby. And it just hit me at the word relationship. I had never heard that before. I never knew that God wanted a relationship with me,
Well,
like a real relationship. And then it just all started to click in my head. I'm like, that makes it like the concept so simple. I know what a relationship is. I have relationships. I have healthy relationships with my wife and with my parents, with my kids. Like I know what it takes. It takes, loyalty and friendship and faith and love. And I know how to do that. And you're telling me that I can just apply that to Jesus and then that's it. That's all I need to do. And so like from there, like that was the moment that word relationship just pierced me right in my heart. And to know that he died on the cross in this horrific way just so he could have a relationship with me, and that moved me beyond anything else. And so that at that point I was saved, and so I was all in. At that point, I was not looking back and not grasping at any other little g gods or constellations or other philosophies. I was sold.
that's really cool because it seems like sometimes you hear of people saying, well, I was pursued by this person. And that's always a great thing. Like, it's always a great thing to hear of like when, like my family story, like my older brother was invited by a specific person and pursued by this specific person. And it changed like our course in history, of course. But like, he kind of sounds like Jesus himself was pursuing you. Like, not even through one person, but just, like, through this swirl of events, like, he was drawing you guys in.
I feel like
Amen.
that for both of us, all four of us, really, our whole family. I feel like
I think
he just
it was for our kids. Like
yes.
he was saving our the generations. That's really the most important thing for me. Not even my life, but my kids' life. Like
Mhm.
and their kids that we can take our family in a new direction.
Mhm.
That's the real blessing for me.
Yeah. So do you feel like your kids kind of adjusted the same way and just were all into?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
they were thirsty for it too.
Yeah.
They needed it.
Yeah, because they felt they were just like we did, they were feeling isolated and alone, and because they knew, what we were doing, in our I'm gonna you can edit this if you want, but our resistance of tyranny and our lifestyle thereof was right, but at the same time it left us isolated uh, and alone, and they never really had super close relationships with kids at school anyway, and a little bit with the homeschool kids, but kind of wishy-washy. um, so they were thirsty for it as well, yeah, like Katrina said.
So how did you guys go from that season to finding KL?
Um, we were like I said, we didn't have like a church that we'd grown up in or anything really to go back to. So I just started Googling
Well,
online.
wait.
Oh wait. Okay,
Wait,
we have to
before
edit this.
you go there, yeah, no, it's okay. That
Our
because
first.
well, but we had, like I said, we had started reading the Bible from the beginning. We started in Genesis, and so we knew that that was the same. It's all one book. We knew that that was all one book, and that Jesus came to fulfill that earlier portion. So we knew that that was the same God, and so, but we didn't really understand where we fit into that with all the rules and like in Leviticus and all these things. Like, we're not Jewish, but do we have to do those things? Because it is the same
Right.
God, and He did command us to do that. And so we were kind of confused, and one of our friends in the homeschool group was a little more toward the Hebrew roots side of things, and was already celebrating Shabbat on Saturday, and so that made a lot of sense to us. And so we kind of started to, not fully observe it, but at least like recognize that as the Sabbath, Saturday as the Sabbath. But we also, again, knew we weren't Jews, and so we were kind of confused. We knew we wanted to pursue Jesus, and we knew we weren't Jewish, and that was, I'll let Katrina continue.
And so, yeah, you're right. And so, we were like, well, let's try a church. Let's try and see if we can find a church that observes Shabbat on Saturday. And so I started like Googling and looking and it found KL. I did see a couple of other a couple of other synagogue, like messianic synagogue type of congregations. But they felt more Jewish, and we weren't sure if that would work for us. And so we found KL, and they had a youth group. We're like, oh, this will be really great. Like be good for our kids, and we'll go check it out. And
So you watched the live stream and you saw a young lady dancing up front. You're like, hey, she's about Ava's age. Uh,
that's
that was
right. We
great.
got other kids that are around our kids' age. It was Cassidy. And um, so yeah, we went and um, never stopped.
The very first message teaching was Tom talking about how to be a messianic believer and not be weird. And we're like, oh, this is exactly what we needed to hear. We were just wondering how to love Jesus and observe, this God, but not be weird and not be, because our family was already like, so are you Jewish now? And we're like, no, but and so we didn't know how to explain it, and, like, Tom just the very first time just explains, like, "Here's what you need to know." And we're like, "Oh my gosh, Lord, you just brought us right here for this very reason."
That's
And then the very next day, membership class started, and we go to membership class, and, like, the very first pillar of the community that Rich starts talking about is relationship. And I was like, "Oh,
Aw.
okay, that's it. We're in the right place."
No, that's
So
perfect.
yeah.
Wow. That sounds like he really just pointed you exactly where you needed to go.
He did. He did. And then I felt like even the after membership class was done, then we tried the very first small group we tried was with Sam, and that was like perfect for us. And we're like, well, I guess we're at home at the home, like we're in the small group at the church, with
Yeah.
the everything. He just pointed us like, here's what you need, here's what you need, here's what you need. Like just cut through you know, all of the clutter and just put us right where we need to be.
That's so great. So the podcast, the title is Rivers in the Wasteland. So the whole passage is Isaiah 43:18 and 19. But forget all that. It is nothing compared to what I'm going to do. He's referencing the splitting of the Red Sea, which I think is incredible because that is like the biggest monumental thing that could happen. And he's telling us that he's got more for us. But he says, I'm about to do something new. See, I've already begun. Do you not see it? I will make a pathway through the wilderness. I will create rivers in the dry wasteland. And while you guys are talking, I'm literally just seeing this pathway through the wilderness that he made. Like he created that for you.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just wild because, I feel like we all have our stories with our own wilderness, but it was almost like he just saw you guys wandering around and, with everything that you were trying just would give you this like I think of the word insatiable, like there's nothing that could satisfy that longing except for Jesus himself. And so it just seems like he created that perfect pathway. He took you not only brought you to him, but to KL, to the membership class, to the small group, exactly where you needed to go, and gave you living water.
Yes.
Yes, if he could see we were searching for him, and he had the grace to help us out.
Well, I think you guys have such a unique story. And honestly, there's so many people that I feel like just continue to dabble in things because everyone tells them that they're really not that big of a deal. And I just love that you guys are a great testament to, you know, really cutting off things that are not giving, cutting off things that are not bringing life and actually like putting your time and attention and energy into the thing that will bring you that life. And
Right.
so,
If I can add one thing,
yeah.
it sounds like we're coming in for landing. The landing gear's down, but I was gonna add two things real quick. Number one, that I heard a podcast shortly after I was saved that I was listening to, and the guy was talking about how he grew up in a cultural Jewish home, not practicing Jewish, but cultural Jewish, and then like left to study all the Eastern religions and the Buddhism and all of these things, Sikhism, and ultimately realized when he got to Christianity that all of these other religions, you're trying to elevate to God. You're trying to go up to God and reach him and vibrate higher and do whatever to get to God to do. And Christianity is the one religion where God reached down to get to us. And all we need to do is accept that and accept his offering of his son that he sent here to be with us, and that we don't have to try and elevate, but rather go low to accept what he's already done, the finished work to reach to be with us. And then the other thing is that when you were saying that verse, it made me think that when we were getting baptized, I think it was either Leah or Sarah that was praying over us and over Katrina that she got the word that the Lord would restore all that the locusts had eaten. And at the time, I was like, that sounds cool. But like now, after 3.5 years of being members there, I feel like that is that is so true. Like,
Wow.
I could not have imagined the friendships that we have, the relationships, the relationship with the Lord, the deeper understanding of what he wants from us and for us, like all of that. I had no idea, and I didn't even know what I was in store for. And it's been so amazing to discover and to be on this journey. And I feel like the Lord has just been so kind and so gracious to, just like the prodigal son. Like you think he's just gonna say, okay, you can stay, but go be with the pigs. No, he gave us the signet ring and wrapped his robes around us. And he said, come have a feast. And it's been such a blessing. And we are so, so grateful.
That's really amazing. So, what would you say to someone who's kind of wandering around right now? Like, if you could say anything to someone who might be listening, who's kind of just in the wilderness, not sure yet of um, of choosing the path. Maybe someone might be a little nervous to go all in.
Oh, I think it cannot be overstated that Jesus loves you, like really deeply, personally loves you, like specifically you, and came here and had you on his mind and on his heart when he died, so that you could have a relationship with him and be with him forever and dwell in his house forever. And that can't be understated. I thought that was trivial growing up as a kid. I was like, okay, yeah, I died. No, I didn't fully understand it or grasp the gravity of it. But after having gone through my experience and actually reading the Bible, it cannot be understated that he loves you so deeply, like he loves you to death. Literally, he died for you, and so all you need to do is say yes to him. Just give him a chance and just invite him into your life and give him a chance and see what he does.
Well, thank you guys so much. I love your story, and I'm so thankful that our paths crossed. So we got to hear your story, and I get to be your friend and have dinners with you guys, and it's just so fun.
Yes, yes, and amen.
Brad and Katrina, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much for having us. This has been an honor to be on your podcast.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.
You are very welcome. I'll see you guys Saturday. Thank you for joining me today. If this episode resonated with you, or if this podcast has been a blessing in your life, please leave a rating or a review on your favorite platform. And don't forget to subscribe so you'll be notified of all upcoming episodes. Remember that God is at work today in mighty ways, ready to make rivers in the wasteland. If He can do it for them, I know He can do it for you.